I think if you don't know history, you think that what's happening is cruel in a lot of cases. Not just in the case that we're talking about, but because you don't understand the history of it, you don't understand the decision making process. I'm talking about God given history. The history that God sanctions, in other words. History is the justification for movement. History is the justification for movement. History is the justification for what you should do. You don't just get up and do something causing something to transpire or causing something to happen without understanding your history. Let's look at it in a small way. Understanding my history, I understand that I'm a bit of a risk taker. Understanding my history, I understand I came from a single parent home. I dealt with insecurity. I dealt with a feeling of belonging. I dealt with no emphasis on education. I dealt with being raised by my grandmother until her death in 1973, while my mother was doing what she was doing. I dealt with not understanding how life works. I dealt with a lot of things. But I also understand my history and understand that my mother was the baby of the family, that my family came from the South here in America. By the way, this is for my kids, my grandkids, my brothers and sisters in Kenya, my brothers and sisters in Ghana. I now know my brothers in India. So we're getting bigger. It doesn't feel that way, but we're growing. God bless you all. If you understand your history, you can understand your flaws. You can understand your strengths. You can understand what it takes to do what God is telling you to do. Now, when I say the word God, I know that throws a whole bunch of people off because, people think Jesus. Or people think the Bhagavad Gita, or people think, all the different all the data that adds up to God and the personhoods that you all relate to. Now, I make no apologies. I'm a born-again, spirit-filled, tongue-talking Christian that believes that Jesus is my Lord and Savior. But even that I have to explain to you because even Christians some wouldn't get what I'm saying when I say that. Jesus was my great example, but along with Paul in the Bible. Jesus was my brother. Jesus, Lord, Savior. But because people don't study those words, a lot of people don't really even understand what that even means when he says he is the way, the truth, and the life. You have to understand the history. You have to understand where you're coming from in most cases to understand where you're going, because there are some things that make up your thinking, your intellect, your intelligence that were iniquities raised on the inside of you? What do you say to the baby born addicted to drugs? What do you say to the person that before they were born, their mother was subject to incredible beatings? What do you say to people who have propensity or a tendency to certain extremes and they don't know where it comes from? It is the whole purpose of the renewing of the mind and taking on a mindset that is counter, oftentimes, your discipline, counter your thought pattern, making decisions not based upon your thought patterns, but making decisions based upon your knowledge and your understanding. Your thought pattern can be counter wisdom. In a lot of cases it is. Well, you may have wisdom in certain areas, but where you want to go, you need different wisdom, which is different thought patterns that you've had since you were a child. And the only way you can deal with that is dealing with your history and taking an honest look at where you came from to look at where you're going. Not true for everyone. Some people are on a path that their history guided them to, have no understanding of that history, and yet doing pretty well because of the work of their ancestors and the elders in their life. But for the most part, most of us need to understand history. I need to understand history. I don't enjoy. I was in the car earlier today on the way here, and I was thinking to myself, man, I need healthy things that I enjoy doing. I enjoy studying history on my own terms. The reason why is because it gives me a better understanding not just of me, but of people groups, and the atmosphere. In Deuteronomy 1, where God is telling Moses to tell the children of Israel, and even Israel, I might add, to go and take the land, it was because of the history. The land had been promised, and the ruler of the land had been promised. It's interesting. This is interesting to me as well, that the people that were conquered, the Amorites, were like me. They were nomads. They didn't necessarily believe in a monolithic, they didn't have a monolithic theocracy type of thing going. They believed in polytheism. Multiple, if you will. So, as far as gods go, they worship the sun god, the moon god, the sky god. They believe they were all married, and the moon god was the baby of the, And I'm not saying anything negative or positive about these things. I'm just telling you the history. Well, the God of Moses, the hand of Moses, said that land belongs to the people of Israel. And those particular people had to go. But you have to understand the history of the Amorites, the nomadics, and the people that they come from. Understanding that the territory had been promised to Israel, Isaac, Abraham, and Jacob, Jacob being Israel, for generations. So the Amorites weren't entitled to the land in the first place. And the nomadic, and they understood the history. They were the people to take over Ur. Now I know you don't understand that, and we're not going to go back into Genesis right now, but Ur of the Chaldeans was taken over previously by the Amorites. Ur built a massive wall to try to keep the Amorites out, and it didn't work. I'm going to explain some things to you in a minute. At that time, when the Amorites had taken over, Abraham had left. At that point, it could be a prophetic thing that Abraham left, but God had told him to leave before the Amorites took over, decimated the city. The people group. God was behind that as well. Now maybe you don't want to hear all that, but this was all God's plan. Where you are in your life, and where I am in my life, is God's plan. So when Abram left with Sarai and began his journey, because God had made him a promise, the Amorites were sacking Ur. Now at this time, Abraham being the son of promise as well, at this time in the book of Deuteronomy, after Abraham, after Isaac, after Jacob, generations later, it's now time for the Amorites to be kicked out of the land that was promised through Canaan, son of Ham, which is the son of Noah, which made a promise that Japheth, the oldest son, would live in the tents of Shem, the middle son, who would be served by Ham, the younger son. This is a promise made back in Genesis chapter 9. Well before the Amorites, well before Isaac, Jacob, what have you. And this is the culmination of that promise. Or this is based upon the history of the decision-making power of God. Let me explain it to you like this. If God has called you to something, He will move pieces around to get you to that position, while maturing you for the position. You don't just walk into something not understanding your history. You walk into it understanding your history and then understanding what your role is. Moses is explaining to the children of Israel what had been promised to them before they were born. Some people believe in blind faith. I don't. I don't believe in blind faith. I believe in faith that is based upon wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. Someone just telling me to do something doesn't make sense to me. I need some version of understanding. Let me give you another example. If I work for someone as an employee or a slave, an employee is a type of slave. In other words, you do what you're told without questioning the answer or the request. You do it for a wager or wage, and you move on. As a slave, that's what you do. You don't need outside understanding. The person is giving you a task based upon their understanding or wisdom of your ability. You just do the task. But as a business owner and as a prince, I need more explanation because you're asking for my endorsement to put my people or myself in harm's way. I need to understand your wisdom. So I'm going to probably ask more questions. In particular, if you're asking to hold me responsible for the result. The reason why that's important is because as someone who's acting as a prince or a priest, you need to be making decisions based on something. And you need to be making it based on your history. Understanding the dynamic of what's going on. When Moses is telling the people that it's time to take over the land, there is a powerful group of people in there called the Amorites, and they are no joke. They're nomadic, they move around, they know the territory, they understand it. But because of the history and the promise to the ancestors and the understanding and the wisdom of the elders, primary elder being Moses, who understood his history, victory was pretty much guaranteed. So for my kids, my grandkids, my brothers and sisters in Kenya, my brothers and sisters in Ghana, and my brothers in India, it's not just a matter of doing what you feel. In reality, you're getting the promises made to your ancestors and your elders, but it doesn't mean that you don't have to fight for it. It just means that you're going to win the fight, as long as you understand your history. CashApp $MrPaulDozier, CashApp $MrPaulDozier. We are on a journey. From Genesis to Revelation, I do not know how long it's going to take. But I appreciate you taking the journey with us and with me. If these videos are helpful to you, they will be helpful to others. So please like and share on whatever format this is on. Share them with your family, your friends, your business partners, your congregation. It's a great study. Right now we're in Deuteronomy, which is the last book of the Torah. So whether you study the Torah or the Pentateuch, all depends on the culture. This may be some commentary that may be helpful to you as well. But other than that, thank you so much for taking the journey with us.